it's interesting when you look at, if you strip it back and people will go, all you lot ever do is go on about, you know, illegal migration. Crowborough is a sweet, calm little village. They've had this training camp for decades. What happened on Friday, for people who's tuning in, is the first 27 arrived in the dark of night. And when I say this to people, they go, what? By 9 a.m. they saw a private GP. OK, just bear that in mind. There's 7 million people waiting to see a doctor who have paid their taxes. This is just fact. By 11 o'clock, they're given a free mobile phone, because if they go missing for more than 5 days, because they're allowed to come and go willy-nilly, they'll go, oh, we'll try and ring them, and if we can't get hold of them, we'll just tick them off. We don't know who these people are. We don't know where they are going to or coming from, and we don't know their motivation. And basically what you've got, and this is not over the top, and it happened in Epping, is a government saying, actually, we favour the rights of migrants over law-abiding, tax-paying citizens who have been here all their lives. That is a recipe for anarchy.
Absolutely.
And I'm not condoning anything. Peaceful, yes, please, but people are going to go, why am I living my life correctly? This is a joke, man.
No, you're completely right. And I think it's quite interesting because Shabana Mahmood will tell the public, no, this is us cutting flashy, expensive hotels. This is us putting, you know, asylum seekers, illegal migrants, as we should call them, in barracks. They're not fancy and this will deter them. No, first of all, it's not going to deter them. That's for sure. They still get all those benefits, as you spoke about. They're still getting NHS, free this, free that. But you can see that the issue is still very much there, and you can see how Labour doesn't understand that it's actually about embedding these men within the local community. Yeah. It's only 20,000 people in that community of Crowborough, and there might be up to 500 illegal migrants placed in there. And Isabel Oakeshott, who you'll have on in a second, has done really great work exposing how in Wethersfield it's been an absolute nightmare because these illegal migrants still go into the community. I mean, they're bussed in there in Wethersfield. They go there, they create havoc. We don't know who they are, what their intentions are, but we do know that they've already broken the law by breaking into this country. So as you can see, there's a very, very horrible situation that's almost like a powder keg that might just explode if something was to happen in Crowborough. And unfortunately, I believe it's inevitable, just looking at the statistics and what's been happening. I don't wish it on the community.
No, nobody
but who
wishes.
knows?
Nobody wishes that. But you're talking about, to me, there's this word that keeps coming back, right, which is fairness. And I keep saying this. You are saying to people, alarm clock Brits, who get up and go to work, who don't break the law, who pay their taxes, who respect their fellow citizens and live within their community, that you are going to be treated worse than potentially a male criminal with no papers who's going to have his arse wiped. Now, that is a recipe for disaster. About detention centres, personal opinion, yes, out at the hotels. There have to be detention centres, OK? Think of Nightingale hospitals. I don't know, no disrespect to the Orkney Islands. There have to be places that are away from community centres, not places that are nice. Maybe there is barbed wire around them. Maybe the beds aren't that comfortable. You're not getting a mobile phone. You're not getting your backside wiped, because the message I'd want to send to you, to send to your friends back home, is we're not a soft touch. We're not going to treat you better than we treat our own population. And people say to me, they go, it's outrageous, that. And I go, no, it's not. It's unfair to British people.
Well, it's not outrageous because we did it in Australia through Operation Sovereign Borders, exactly what you just outlined there, and it stopped the boats within a week. Now, granted, we have had slightly different boats, slightly different issues, but once you give a no-frills attached offering to these sort of opportunistic people who will cross the channel, then they just stop coming, because that's what they are, economic migrants. Let's not call them anything else. And I think it's really horrible, because the town's having to spend over £5.5 million a year extra on policing now for that barracks. So it's not exactly a cheaper option, is it? I mean, it genuinely, none of this makes sense. And Shabana Mahmood needs to get her act together, because the community isn't having it. And their actual prayers to not have this haven't been listened to. And she's threatening everyone across the country with this rollout of putting illegal migrants in barracks. It's quite horrific when you actually think about the scale of what she's trying to do.
Thank you to Samara for mentioning me there. But I mean, this is great work that she's also doing for Talk. just bringing to life what is going on in Crowborough, which is so sort of emblematic of the wider problem across the UK with the outrage and fear and rightful indignation of small communities and even larger communities that are profoundly affected by the idea of very significant numbers of undocumented males being allowed to roam around their communities. This is so wrong. And I feel the frustration of voters, ordinary communities. These are people that are not necessarily at all political. You know, they're not motivated by whether they vote Labour, they vote Reform, they vote Conservative. They just see a genuine and perfectly rationally based threat to their way of life and the safety of their children, of women in particular. But they also see a deep injustice and frankly outrageous insult to taxpayers and those who get up and work hard in these people who break the law to come into our country and then just get given everything, and in most cases don't even show respect, never mind gratitude, to the British people for their hospitality.
I must say, some of the words you've used there are so perfect, and I've written them down for a reason, because I keep having in my head the unfairness, and I keep thinking about that silent majority who, as you said, have never really been politically motivated, but the sense of, as you put, injustice, the sense of unfairness, the sense of, hold on a minute, this is irrational crap, to be honest, the safety of our children. This is not. I just think that, you know, I remember after Southport, those riots, and it was Starmer jumped up and it was all far right. You look at the work that Samara's doing, the work that you did with the undercover migrants, and you listen to these people, right? These are hard-working indigenous people who pay their taxes and want to bring their families up in a safe environment. They're not overtly political. They're basically saying, you're destroying or not even thinking about my life, my family, my community. And this Crowborough story maybe it becomes the altar on which, I don't know, but it is going to happen across this country, and this is not going to get any better. And listen, you've done this for years, far longer than me. I would love somebody to be able to sit me down and say, there is method in their madness, because they are so tone deaf to what the average person in this country thinks. So tone deaf. And that you fear for what... you have to be careful doing this, you know this. I fear what's next. What is going to happen, in your mind?
I just think people are ready to explode. And we British people are very law-abiding instinctively. We're not like the French. We don't blockade things. We don't go on the rampage. We're not like protesters in less democratic regimes where they're forced to do extreme things. We want to do things properly, with good manners, politely. That's who we are.
Yeah.
But if all of that falls on deaf ears, where is there left to go? I just want to be really, really clear with anyone who's still in any doubt about the type of people coming our way. And I will first say that there is a very small minority of those who are coming our way who we genuinely might wish to give refuge to. But let me be crystal clear, having done this profound investigation into who is in those migrant camps, these are not people who can speak any English at all, on average. They can't even really go beyond telling you the name of the country they've come from. They are not educated. They are not skilled. They have zero resources. Why does that matter? How can they possibly be a net asset to those communities in which they are plonked? They can't be. And many of them have got debts to pay to the criminal masterminds that brought them here in the first place. This is insanity.
It is complete insanity. Listen to this. I've got a lead for you and Samara. Rachel, Jez, I sympathise with the people of Crowborough. However, this is happening in my town, Walsall, and has been happening for a decade. We are overrun and nobody cares. We're not on the news and no one listens. My town is now the most deprived town in the UK. It is frankly an awful place to live, and that is because it has become a place for people who offer nothing to come to. That's a really interesting lead, because I think, and you know, you and I do this for a living. Of course we have to be careful. If you say the wrong thing, you know, what's going to happen? But the truth of the matter is, and I go back to that text I had months ago, the silent majority have woken up. And Samara's right, they're not massively political, you're right. But they've just had enough of being looked down at, treated so wrongly. And you end up thinking, I don't know what happens, but I tell you what will happen. The people of this country are going to demand change, and whether that's reform, the Greens, the monster raving loony party, the new... It doesn't matter. No longer is this stuff going to be acceptable. It just can't be, and it's awful. I want to pick you up on a couple of other things if I can. The Labour Party, I mean, you're like me. We're not conspiracy theorists, but we've always got an opinion. We've watched Starmer and the NEC, you know, stitch up Burnham. We've seen the far left, or the left, are jumping up and down. Wes Streeting's running around going, oh, Burnham's not in, I've got a chance. Rayner's like, maybe I should go on my own now. Andy Burnham, self-styled King of the North. Ask the people of Manchester, probably not. Starmer's a dead man walking. We know that. But I think I've got a strange belief that Burnham knew he wouldn't be selected and did it so he could become a martyr. I think it was absolutely known from day one. What are your thoughts on the disaster that is the Labour government over the weekend, sweetheart?
Just before I get on to that, just finally to say, from the caller that said no one cares about what's going on in Warsaw, I care, actually, and so do a lot of other journalists, and I will make sure that if it's not Samara, then it's me or someone close to me that gets to that town and reports what's going on.
They are, Rach. You got that. You got that commitment, Rachel. We will be on Walsall, I promise you.
So secondly, on Andy Burnham, well, he would have known that there was a possibility of this blocking movement, and he would have probably decided, well, let's test it and see what happens. And he knows that it plays in his favour, medium to longer term, to have been sort of prevented in this way. And it is so nauseating, isn't it, to hear Starmer's apologists coming on and talking about, well, you know, voters don't like the inconvenience. That was a word he used, the inconvenience of extra elections. Well, I tell you what, Mr. Labour apologist, no voter in our country is forced to go and vote. So I think they'll generally live with the inconvenience. The ones that care about what's happening to their towns and cities.
I didn't know democracy was an inconvenience, Isabel. I thought it was a right.
I think what it is an opportunity to get rid of politicians and leaders that are failing our towns and cities. It is not an inconvenience. And as for moaning about the waste of money, well, that is completely outrageous, coming from an administration that on a daily basis squanders millions, sometimes hundreds of millions, on totally unnecessary things. So that ain't gonna fly.
Completely agree. 16 billion they gave to the Chagos Islands. I'm fascinated as to where this all is. I mean, many people are saying that the reason that they blocked it may be personal ambition for Starmer, but also, yeah, you're right, all this, it's going to cost too much. They knew absolutely they were going to lose that mayoral election. That wouldn't look good before the local elections. To me, it's just kicking the can, excuse the pun, down the road. I think he's a dead man walking. I don't think Andy Burnham is what everybody thinks he is, if you want me to be perfectly honest, and I might say something quite outrageous here. I'd prefer Angela Rayner to have a go, because we'd have a fun few months, wouldn't we? Them Tory boys would be having a go. But it's such a mess. This government seems to not listen to the people of Britain, and we are going... And a lot of people, Isabel, will get hold of us and say, how long can this madness carry on? Are we strong enough as a country to last this? That just all the problems that mount up on a daily basis. Today we've got... I'm sure you've read this, Shabana Mahmood saying she's going to make the biggest overhaul of policing in the service's 200-year history, which basically means she's going to put more policemen and women on the streets, eventually at some point, probably never. I just don't believe anything this government says.
Well, you called Starmer a dead man walking. The problem is our country. Is this going to be a dead country walking?
Yeah.
The longer this goes on for, the damage to our way of life, the damage to our economy, the damage to basically people's morale. All these good, hardworking, fundamentally decent people that, as we said before, don't want to spend their time protesting. They don't want to spend their time wondering if they can possibly make ends meet and pay their tax bills and so on. They just want to enjoy a quality of life. And how long are they going to tolerate this? Well, what can we do? This is a government that is literally cancelling elections. That is not something that should take place in a democratic country like our own. We've got all the downsides of a democracy in that everything takes ages and has to be debated. At least give us the upsides, which is the ability to choose who leads us.
I couldn't agree more. And just before we finish, to go back to Crowborough and to that lady in Walsall, Isabel, always happy to look into stuff. If there are areas, I'm thinking actually in the UK, Rachel mentioned Walsall, where you think this is happening, we will get on it, I promise you. Couple of comments for you, Isabel. Jackie in Stoke-on-Trent. Jezza, isn't the clue in the word detention centre? Aren't they supposed to be detained? Just saying. I think that's really relevant. Natasha says, to add to the madness, please read this to Isabel. How long does she think it is before the illegals say that the standard of accommodation at Crowborough is against their human rights, like the Bibby Stockholm? The government gives in and they get moved somewhere nicer. That's probably going to happen as well, Isabel.
Well, I think so. And later this week on Talk, I will be bringing you the story of the empty prison. Apparently, we desperately need prison places, but not so much that we don't empty out a prison because we're worried about some little health things there that could easily be mitigated. And then we talked last week, didn't we, about the actual detention centre, the one with a ring of steel around it.
17 million quid. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
No one's in it. No one's in it. Don't talk to us about wasting money, Keir Starmer, because you're the expert on that.
There's so much I want to ask you. So much. Let's start with Suella, or Suellin, as her mother named her.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, who names their child after Suella? Suellin in Dallas. That's really weird because it's not a great character. She was very.
Suellin, you're a drunk. You're a drunk.
Yeah,
Imagine
exactly.
having your only daughter and naming her after some drunk.
I know. You used to play Drink with Dallas. We did in our family.
Did you?
Yeah, you watched Dallas, and then every time they had a drink, you had a drink. And you'd be 7 sheets to the wind by the end of the evening.
I think a lot of students used to do that with the Jeremy Kyle show in the early 2000s on a phrase. That's probably another thing that we shouldn't talk about. Let's talk about Suella Braverman.
Yeah.
Interestingly, latest defection, she released this sort of bombshell speech afterwards. She said, I feel like I've come home. The Tory party machine, we're told this morning by Sir John Redwood, the leadership didn't know, released a statement saying, we've been trying to deal with her mental health problems, and then retracted it. Not a great look, is it, Sarah?
Not really. I think that was a bit of an unforced error, to be honest. I mean, they should have just said, we're sorry that Suella wasn't happy in the party, and we wish her every bit of luck. That's all you say, isn't it? That's the only thing you can really say. No, I think they've shot themselves in the foot with that one.
When you look at her and Jenrick, is your opinion that it is ideology that the Tories have gone too far to the centre and reform offers that, or is it about, as Tories have said, Sarah, they've said, it's personal ambition. She got sidelined, he didn't make leader. What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it is personal ambition. Jenrick in particular never really accepted the result of the leadership contest. He came a very close second to Kemi Badenoch. And then, after she became leader, he just went off and started freelancing. And, he did some really good stuff. Let's not lie. I mean, he's a good politician, and all his stuff on fare dodging and all that all those TikToks that he did were very effective. But it wasn't really a team effort. He wasn't sort of part of the Tory team. I think Suella's always been, even when she was in government, she was always a little bit of an outlier. She's very outspoken. She has very clear views, and she's not afraid to express them. So I think with her, I think it is probably more ideological. I think she is genuinely quite on the right of the party, and I suspect that actually Reform is politically probably much more where she belongs.
Do you think Reform and Nigel Farage are these defectors, that he's taking successful Tories who will help, in his mind, provide that experience if and when he gets into government, or are they failed Tories looking to jump onto a bandwagon and save their careers?
I mean, all political careers end in failure. There's no such thing as a sort of as a universally successful politician. Politics is a very strange. I mean, I personally think that you have to be a little bit mad to be in politics. Full stop.
Yeah.
But it just is one of those jobs that is very difficult to do, and it takes an enormous toll mentally on the people doing it. I think that. I think Farage needs to be careful that he doesn't end up with a sort of Frankenstein's monster of a party that is made up of all body parts from other parties that didn't quite work out. I think he's a brilliant campaigner, but his one. The area where he is lacking is he's never actually been in government. He's never been a minister. So I think he's acutely aware of that, and I think that's possibly why he's recruiting people who do have experience. But he needs to remember that I think the general populace would also like a fresh start politically.
Yeah. And I think that's half the issue, isn't it? I think you've got, they're sort of split the country, aren't they, between, the man's got no experience, he needs the people who understand the machinations of Westminster, but also there are many people, there's millions in this country who go, do you know what? All of them, Tories, Labour, whatever they are, have made such a hash of this that maybe some normal, down-to-earth people who have never been in politics wouldn't make as bad a job. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting that yesterday, Ruth Davidson, I don't know if you remember Ruth Davidson, who used to be
Scottish leader.
Very impressive woman. She's sort of launched her own party on the basis that there are 7 million people in this country who are essentially politically homeless and who don't feel affiliated to any of the existing parties. I think what we are seeing here is the real fracturing of our political landscape. But the one big issue that I think we do have, if that happens, and it is obviously happening, is that we don't have proportional representation. So we still have this first past the post system. Yeah. Which produces very strange results. Do you know what I mean? I mean, arguably one of the reasons we have a Labour majority is because of our system. Because
34%, wasn't it?
Exactly. Which is, when you think about it, that's really not representative of the country. 34% returns a massive majority for a Labour government. That feels like wrong to me. I don't know.
It'd be interesting actually taking that point up. And why am I coughing when I'm interviewing you? I read an article in the paper, I think it was in the Mail over the weekend, about how this particular person felt that the Reform Party had reached its peak, that the only way, if there wasn't going to be a deal, there wasn't going to be a cohesion of the two parties, that they would stop the left. I've got a name for Zach Polanski. You don't mind me telling you what it is, do you?
I think I can guess.
Hypno tits. I make no apologies, but the danger of him and Labour coming through the back door means that at some point people believe that the right... Do you think at the very least, whatever they say right now, there might be some sort of deal to counter what you've just said in terms of first past the post in certain seats? Do you think that might happen, or do you think that Farage is so hell-bent on destroying the Tories because he felt let down by Johnson that actually that would never happen?
I think you've identified a really serious problem. Part of the problem is that he's absorbing all the Tories that don't want to be in the Tory party anymore. So that makes it even harder to make some sort of arrangement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because these are people who really don't see eye to eye. So in a way, the more disgruntled Tories he takes, the less likely that Unite the Right, prospect becomes, because they're all so angry with each other, and it is a sort of psychosis. I mean, that's what Kemi Badenoch said yesterday or the day before. She said, "I'm sick of all this psychosis." Well, I think everybody is sick of it, but the problem is that these people continue to behave in a way that means that any sort of coalition is increasingly unlikely, I think.
What do you make of her? I interviewed her the other day. I thought to myself, because I'm old and I'm allowed to say it, she reminds me of William Hague. Right person, probably at the wrong time.
Yeah, I've met Suella a few times. She's actually a very nice person.
No, Kemi. Sorry, I meant Kemi, actually.
Oh, Kemi. Oh, well, yes, she's...
Right person, wrong time, somehow.
I mean, time will tell. I mean, it's going to, you know, I think we've got a long time yet until the next general election. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. What I would say about Kemi is she's very, and if you think that we live in a world of sort of fast politics, like fast food, she's the opposite. She's very much head down, under the bonnet. Let's take our time. Let's work out what needs to be done. And I think that's a sensible thing. Politicians like her don't always get the glory, is what I would say. So they do a lot of the hard work and put in the time, and she's very much like that. But you're right, whether or not she'll make it to the final hurdle, I don't know. I like her. I think she's quite sort of... Did you hear her Desert Island Discs? I thought that was quite fun. It was quite insightful, I think, into the sort of personality she is. Did you know her favourite movies are? Her favourite movies is the Marvel Universe, which made me laugh a lot because I love the Marvel.
All right, ask me this because I'm desperate to be your friend. What do you think my favourite movie is? I'm So Unmanly.
Is it
a rom-com and Ben and Jerry's?
Love Actually.
Well, that or Notting Hill with my wife. I mean, that is so soft, isn't it?
Not When Harry Met Sally.
I don't know, probably not. Kemi Badenoch, on a serious note,
yeah,
can she stop them from being toast, or is the Tory party as we know it forever gone?
I think she's look, I don't think anyone in her position is going to have an easy time.
No.
The Tory party has a reputational problem, reputational damage. It's got lots of people in this country who just wouldn't vote Tory because they're just so annoyed with them. And like like your previous caller, who am I going to vote for? I think that's a very fair point. So I don't really think it matters at this stage who is the leader of the Tory party. I don't think Jenrick would have necessarily done much better.
No.
I think what they need is someone very solid who's going to work hard and do as much work as they possibly can to rehabilitate the Conservative Party. And I think in that respect, she's doing a pretty good job. And she's up against a lot of critics, but she is polling very well with the country. So she came out top recently, I think it was at the end of last week, in a poll, actually higher than Farage. And so she personally, I think, is starting to cut through, and she's doing very well at Prime Minister's questions. She's very quick on her feet. She was very good in her response to the budget. It's a marathon. It's a long game. She just needs to keep going, and that's the hard part. We can all do. Sorry, my cat has come to say hello.
Let's have a look.
Sharon, I've just pushed her off.
Oh, okay.
She always does this. Whenever I do a Zoom, she comes and sits in front of the screen.
I do that with children. Just push them off. There's too many of them.
Yes, go away. So I think she just needs to, KBO, to quote dear old Winston Churchill.
Let's move to the Labour Party. I mean, I'm much older than you. I was so frustrated.
You're much younger than me. What are you talking about?
I'm much older than you.
How old are you, Jamie?
What?
How old are you?
Well, how old do you think?
I don't know, 42?
60.
Oh, well, I'm 58.
Well, yeah, you look a lot better than me. This is just turning into... I'm loving it. I'm just going to talk to Sarah Warren.
That's just the filter I've got on my screen.
I can't see what's happening at the back. What's that? Why have you've got it all blurred?
Yes, because I've got books in the back. And last time I did a Zoom a few years ago with some books, and everyone shouted at me about my books. So,
Don't you remember that that MP who did that once? And there was a pornographic magazine or some
exactly.
Sex toy or something.
I've got Piers Morgan's book on this shelf. That could get me in a lot.
Probably doesn't deserve to be anywhere else as one of my dearest friends. You should stay on the bloody shelf. Good luck to him, by the way. The leg's still... he's still going on about his leg. Only he would be in a private hospital and get his favourite chef to deliver him lamb chops. Did you see that?
Yes, I know. He's the Kim Kardashian of British politics.
He absolutely is the Kim Kardashian of British politics. Front page of the Mail, the Burnham thing interests me. I'd love to... I mean, we'll talk about Starmer and China in a minute. Is he? I mean, because I spent years in Manchester. He is the sort of self-styled king of the north, Andy Burnham.
Yes, totally.
I sort of... Manchester isn't as keen on him as people seem to make out. I didn't actually think he'd win the election. I've got a different theory to this. I think that he eventually decided to stand, knowing that Starmer would block him, to become almost like a martyr to the left. Do you know what I mean? Because there was no guarantee he'd win Denton and Gorton, not in a million years.
Well, who knows? I think he's. You remember when Boris Johnson was mayor of London?
Yeah.
everybody in the Tory party, sort of all the sort of Tory agitators, had this sort of, I can't say wet dream at this time of the day, can I? But you know what I mean.
It's fine on this show.
Fantasy about, oh well, if only Boris was in charge, everything would be fantastic. And I think Andy Burnham occupies a similar space in the Labour sort of mindset, which is they think that he's the sort of, you know,
the Messiah.
The Messiah, you know, and I think so. I agree. I think he's actually played a blinder, because he doesn't actually have to run for that seat, which would be hard work.
Yeah.
And as you say, he might risk losing it. But he's had all the publicity and all of the sort of talk around him. So he's done a very, very good job. And also he's made the Prime Minister look weak. And
he didn't really need that though, Starmer, did he, to be fair?
I know.
I mean,
but, if I had been advising Starmer, I would have said, listen, you let this guy run. He'll because the thing about people like that is that the more you expose them, you let them play out the sort of fantasy, quite often they don't live up to expectations.
I'd have absolutely gone with you. I'd have said, all right, mate, you have a go. Because not only do I not think that you'll win the election, I think you'll really struggle to answer some of the questions, because down here it's a bit harder and a bit more realistic for you.
Exactly. And because, you know, being a mayor is a great thing to do, but it's not in any way, shape or form the same as running the country, which is actually very hard, as we see.
Now, I want to abuse my position a minute. You're going to have to give me 10 seconds and say good morning to my children who are about to get to school. And Oliver and Iris, good morning. But Oliver says it's that wet, they're going to school in a boat. So that's very nice. Have a good day at school. Sarah, let's talk about a man who and I freely admit, during the last election campaign, I was one of those disenfranchised Tories who'd stop listening and wouldn't have mattered what was said, because I was so angry. And I remember, even as a Brit, I remember thinking, we're in such a hole, just do your best. Underneath, I knew what socialist governments do, which is bankrupt this country. I cannot believe the last 18 months. I can't believe how inept this man has become. Today, whilst the cat's the way the mice will play, he's off to China. This is on the back of allowing a super embassy that even the head of MI5 said is a security risk. This is on the back of the fact today there's an article, I think, in the Telegraph saying that Number 10 knows its phones have been bugged by the Chinese for years.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a man who's going to go and make a trade deal, having given away the Chagos Islands to one of China's mates, Mauritius, whilst this country's on its arse. I cannot tell you how... I just don't think there's any part of him that's cut out for this job.
No, I think the thing is, I mean, on the phone hacking thing, I remember when my ex-husband was in government and they had a trip to China, which was years ago. I think it was 2011 or something like that. They all got given burner phones. And we were told that any gift that they were given, because the Chinese would give them gifts, any gift that they were given that had to immediately be destroyed because it would almost certainly be bugged, which was quite annoying, because I think they gave my husband quite a nice lacquer box, which I wasn't allowed to keep. Because
Can you imagine, though? Somebody sent a message earlier. Can you imagine being the Chinese spy that has to bug Starmer's bedroom? Oh, hello. It's not very nice here.
But also they were, you don't, assume that even the toilet bowl is bugged, basically. So we've known this for years and years and years. I personally think the Chinese embassy in central London on the site of the old Royal Mint is a mistake. I don't think... I mean, I doubt very much whether they'll be able to cut any cables to the city or anything like that. But I just think it sends a message. Yeah. You've got this massive Chinese spy hub bang smack in the middle of London. I'm just not sure that's a great idea.
And also, it's not the message that I hear him say, I'm off to make a trade deal for the good of Great Britain. Surely, if your fiscal policies weren't actually aiming at destroying small and medium-sized businesses, then the growth in this country wouldn't be on its arse, and you wouldn't need to go cap in hand to these people.
I agree, but also I think one thing that COVID, highlighted really without any shadow of a doubt was the fact that we are totally over-reliant on China for so much of our... So much stuff, so many of the things that we take for granted. I mean, the whole PPE scandal, that was because it was all because we couldn't get it because China were making all of ours, and components in mobile phones and windmills and solar panels and all of that stuff is made in China, and it's all and China's human rights record is absolutely abysmal. You cannot be certain that the solar panel that's sitting on your roof is not made by some poor slave labor. It's just not okay. And the thing is, a lot of people are saying now, well, because Trump's gone mad, got even madder, and because he's now basically said, I don't care about you. I'm not interested in the transatlantic alliance. Britain and America, we're not really friends. Now, there's that sort of sense that well, who do we pivot to? But I'm not sure that China is the answer. Do you know what I mean? They really are not a very nice country. I mean, I'm sure the Chinese are very nice, but you know what I mean. The government is they so many things that are wrong with them.
Oh, hold on. I've got a voice note. So, I love this. This lady disagrees with you. I'm not having anybody disagree with Sarah Vine. Morning, Laura.
Morning, Jeremy. Laura in Wiltshire. Unfortunately, we woke up at 6 o'clock ready for a juicy show and I've had a power cut for 2 hours. So I'm not quite sure what you've been talking about, but just listen to Sarah Vine. And it's the same old Tory whinging. I'm really sorry. Trying to say, oh, well, they're going to have a Frankenstein's monster of a grouping and failed MPs and all that sort of thing. It's nonsense. Where does anybody expect to get the experience that she says he needs, and that the lack of experience is his Achilles heel, if not from people who have been politicians? And I don't think you can say that either Jenrick or Braverman or Kruger are failed. They've all been extremely successful, but have had to resign or move on out of principle.
That's Laura. I disagree with everything you say, Laura, and agree absolutely with Sarah Vine. Sarah, over to you.
Laura's entitled to her opinion.
Oh, she is. I'm joking, mate. Go on. What do you make of that?
That's fine. That's why this is why we live in the country we live in, and we don't shoot people who disagree with us like they're doing in America. I know. I think Laura's view is quite representative of a lot of people's view, and I suppose whether or not you think those politicians were successful or not depends again on one's own point of view.
Yeah.
I suppose my point is that politics is very, very fractured at the moment.
Yeah.
And yet we have a political system that is essentially geared for two parties. We have a two-party political system. So now we have, myriad, everything is atomized. I don't think it will produce the results that people necessarily want. That's the problem.
A couple of quick questions before we let you go. Can we do this regularly, please?
Yes, of course.
I love having... This is brilliant. Will Farage be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Sarah Vine.
Oh, good question. I don't know is the answer.
Will Starmer last past May?
I think he will, because I think it's very difficult to get rid of him.
Do you? If he didn't, who would replace him? Ange?
I mean, everyone's saying Wes Streeting. I think he's the most likely replacement, but I'm not sure. It's quite hard for the Labour Party to get rid of their leader.
And just finally, as a woman, I have to ask you this, because this infuriates me, this story. Have you heard about this judge, Nimran Garat, who ordered a jury not to be told that a Pakistani national who raped a teenage girl in a park in Nottingham twice, Lee Anderson brought this up, was in fact an asylum seeker? On a serious note to finish, where have we got to? You're 50, I'm 60, where it seems to me that people that come into this country illegally have more rights than people, not just an indigenous population that pays its tax and lives its life correctly, but we're now making a preference of people who commit crimes against victims, for Christ's sake, Sarah.
Yes, I know, and I think it's very poor judgment, because I know why they do it. They do it because they're worried that people will get upset and they'll protest. But people should be allowed to get upset and protest about this stuff.
Absolutely.
It's not okay. It's absolutely not okay that, I moved a few years ago, but I had an asylum seeker hotel on the corner of my street in London, and at the time my daughter was at secondary school, and it was a sort of 3-star hotel full of young males aged between, 19 and 26 or 30. And they were quite intimidating, and they would go to the local park. And I completely understand why people are worried, because they're from a very different culture, and they treat women very, very differently to the way we treat girls and women. And I think the onus is on the authorities to protect girls and women from people who don't necessarily understand that they're living in a country where women are free and are not, like they are in Afghanistan, banned from going to school or having a job or doing any of those things that normal people do. It's a culture clash.
No, it is.
And to pretend that it doesn't to pretend that it doesn't exist, which is essentially what this judge is doing, it's just really counterproductive, and it's only going to make people more angry and more upset and make the problem worse. Here's my cat, Cersei.
What's she called?
Cersei. Cersei after Cersei in Game of Thrones.
Oh, fantastic. I don't want you to say anything untoward, but a Prime Minister who I think has got about as much political DNA in him as don't even say the wrong thing, is off to China today to cosy up to a regime for a trade bill that we know has been bugging number 10 for years, that we know wants a super embassy because even the security forces have said that's a major risk. Your leader, to me, needs to get his ass back in England and deal with the issues that are affecting British people politically and domestically, doesn't he?
Well, he was out there this morning on his TikTok announcing a policy which I think is going to help millions of people up and down the country in terms of the leasehold arrangements when people buy apartments and flats and properties which are not freehold. That's going to be capped at 250 quid. Some of these leaseholds get to the dizzy nights of 11 and 1,200 quid a month, which makes them unaffordable and unsaleable. So that's the type of policies that Keir is getting up to, actually. So in relation to that, we're doing some good stuff, in my view.
Serious question. Do you believe, with the debacle of the last 18 months, that Labour will ever govern again for decades, Carl?
Look, I think it's fair, Jeremy, that the Labour Party is not polling well. That's the reality. If there's a by-election most anywhere at the moment, we're going to struggle to win that by-election.
Yes or no, Carl? Come on, you're a good man. I like you. You like me. Yes or no?
Well, I tell you, I think we can improve to the point where the electorate will trust us, but we need to do some stuff which proves to them
with or without
that we
Keir
are
Starmer. With or without.
Government. Look, Jeremy, I don't want rid of Keir Starmer as the leader. That is the reality. I've had disagreements with him on policy. The jury stuff is where we came up against it with each other. But actually, I do think Keir is worthy of being the leader of the party and very worthy of being the Prime Minister. There's no contest for a leadership election in the Labour Party, and I think people ought to really calm it down to a frenzy. Look, just hear me out for a second. We're 3.5 years away from a general election. Lots can change. They say a week's a long time in politics. I think we can recover, but I think some of the stuff that's been sprung on Labour MPs, welfare benefits, 2-child cap, all of the things we said we're going to do and we were preparing not to do, have irritated the Parliamentary Labour Party to a point where feelings and tensions are running very high. My advice to Keir, and I speak to him, I text Keir regularly and he replies to me. My advice to him is that the Parliamentary Labour Party are really important. We want to work with you. Please don't ignore the party. Get on with the job. Do the stuff that we expect you to do in the manifesto, and don't shock us to death with daft ideas that can't work, like jury trials.
Listen, I would love to have more time, but I want to fire a few things at you. Polling would suggest that he's the most unpopular and worst Prime Minister in living bloody history. I don't know whether the whips have got to you or what, and I'm not being disrespectful there, but come on, man. They're hiding him from even coming out, whether we're talking internationally or domestically, or whether we're talking being at the behest of his own MPs. The man is and has proven to be an absolute flop.
The whips have tried to get to me, Jeremy, and I respect the job of the whips. I'll tell you, I was a whip for several years. I understand the job they have to do for the party. But look, when it's a policy issue which is irritating to people like me who know plenty about the criminal justice system, you have to speak out. He's unpopular. Yes, he is unpopular. But look, I think the country is impatient for change. We're in a 24/7-hour social media society which didn't exist many years ago.
But you started this by saying our own Prime Minister's busy on TikTok. Shouldn't he be actually meeting his own MPs and meeting people out in the country?
That is a very good point, Jeremy, actually, because we have to communicate through such things as social media nowadays in a way that never existed. So people expect instant happiness and things take time. You pull a lever in government, nothing happens. We've had it with the previous Tory government. I'm not being party political. Priti Patel goes and asks the civil servant to do a job that she is elected as a Home Secretary.
Oh, listen, I've got no time for them. I've got three.
And the reality is, the things don't get done. So we are up against it in many respects.
We've got three quick questions, and I want you on again because you're bloody brilliant, Carl Turner. Three things. First thing, John McTiernan was asked this question yesterday. His response nearly blew my mind. Can you name one good thing the Labour government's achieved in 18 months? He said bus fares.
Well, look, I think the thing we talked about this morning, leaseholds, I think free breakfast clubs for kids who are going to school hungry. I think that's a good policy. I think minimum wage going up. I think the Employment Rights Act, which changes the lives of millions of people in the country. Do you know, the vast majority of people get up in the morning and go to graft. That's our country. People go and work hard. They are going to be protected for the first time in decades under this Labour government's legislation for employment rights.
Second
that
question.
Is a great thing.
Are you the man that Nigel Farage is on the verge of announcing as a defector from the Labour Party to reform, Carl Turner?
I go to bed on a night. I can't stand them, the Tories included. I get up in the middle of the night if I'm unfortunate enough to need to the toilet. I remind myself how much I can't stand them. And when I get up in the morning, I remind myself again that I can't stand them even more than when I went to bed. Absolutely categorically, not a chance in hell would I join the Tories, Reform, the Greens, the Lib Dems, or any other party. I'm born Labour, I'll die Labour, Jeremy, I promise you that.
I've got to let you go. Final question very quickly. Will you text Starmer and ask him to come on this show, yes or no?
I've texted him this morning. I suspect if I text him again when he's going to China...
Yes or no for me? I've got to go. Will you text him for me?
No.
Chairman Republican Overseas, Greg Swenson. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. No, I am stateside.
Oh, you have? Honestly, I can't keep up, man. Where are you now?
I'm in Chicago, and it's 1:20 a.m., Jeremy.
You're a legend. I have to say, in all my time in America, the Windy City was one of my favourites. I love it. I love the Windy City.
Lake Michigan right behind me.
Mate, interestingly, you've always been straight with me about Trump. It seems if you read the papers this side of the pond that overnight there has been somewhat of a side or back step from the president. He said that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agents, ICE, of course, will leave Minneapolis. There were clashes. I've read that the man who's been heading it all, Bulvino, I think, has been out of the job now. He's going back to his desk job in California. There's no doubt the White House was under pressure over the killing of Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old nurse, on Saturday. And Trump's response to remove the ICE bill also announced he's sending Tom Homan, his border czar, to Minnesota on Monday to replace Kristi Noem. What do you know about all of this? Is this a major backtrack from the president?
I don't think so, Jeremy. I think it's a bit of a pivot. I think Kristi Noem has not been fired. She's not stepped down. And Tom didn't replace Kristi Noem. Tom actually works for Kristi Noem. So she's the head of the Department of Homeland Security. So she's she reports directly to President Trump. And then Tom Homan runs ICE, or he's the border czar, let's say. And so, but there is clearly a pivot here. And I think what the president realized is that Kristi Noem was, her sort of rhetoric wasn't helping in terms of, the polling. Whereas Tom Homan is more of an on the ground. He runs the border enforcement, let's call it. So, I think in this case, he realized that, Kristi was a bit toxic in terms of how the, ICE was perceived. They were polling, back in the first term, ICE was polling, 50-50 in terms of opinion polls. And now they're down minus 27 in terms
Well, I want to ask you about that because we've known each other a long while, and there's so much about Donald Trump that I wish we had the cojones here. But this has been massively unpopular for good reason, both amongst Republicans and Democrats. And you talk about optics, the optics of a man, carrying a legal weapon but not drawing and being shot in the head. Whatever that woman was, I've no idea. There's no doubt that the desire to deal with immigration is important. The optics have been appalling, haven't they, Greg?
Well, yeah, the optics have been difficult in Minneapolis. And here's what's interesting, Jeremy. You know, I mean, I don't want to bother with the details on this most recent shooting because I don't really know the details yet. But on the woman who died 2 weeks ago, you know, that's pretty clear. I mean, they had every reason and right to defend themselves against her. She was trying to drive a car. Well, she did drive a car into a policeman. So, you know, that's you know, basically weaponizing a motor vehicle. So I think here's the problem. In Minneapolis, it's been difficult. Now, the media keeps telling people that, you know, ICE are you know, using really horrible tactics and they're fascists and they're Nazis, when in fact, in all the other places that ICE is operating, the local governments are cooperating with them. So in Minneapolis, ICE has removed somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 illegal migrants. In Florida, they removed 10,000. In Texas, they removed 30,000. Okay, and yet, you know, 10 times the amount removed in Minneapolis, and yet you never hear a word about those places because there's not an organized insurgency from Antifa and other organized, you know, rebels or seditious sort of, you know, organized rebel groups, and that's what's happening in Minneapolis.
Do you think the president, who is prone not to listen to anybody anyway, and definitely the American people voted for this, do you think he's been affected by the optics, though, and how it's been received? This pivot, he must have been, to a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the polling is the polling, but, you know, 93% of the media coverage of ICE has been negative. And yet, in the states that are cooperating with ICE, I mentioned Florida and Texas, but there's also Tennessee and Arizona and New Mexico, where many more migrants have been removed. There's really no drama, because those state and local governments are cooperating with ICE.
Do you think it's putting the American people off being firm with migration and the problems of illegal migrants with what they're saying, or not?
No, and I think what the president will do in Minneapolis, he's got at least a rapport with Governor Walz and this guy, Mayor Fry, who are, you know, really behaving horribly. But he realized the best way to deal with it now is to just have some local state and government cooperation, which he's getting everywhere else except Chicago, where I am. And most of even the violence against ICE, most of it's in 4 cities, or almost all of it's in 9 cities. But 42% of the violence against, you know, the recorded violent incidents against ICE have been in Chicago, Minneapolis, LA, and New York. And so he's getting cooperation everywhere. Now he just knows he needs it in Minneapolis. But I think he's still going to go after, maybe not the individual idiots on the street, like these 2 poor people, it's as tragic as it is, these 2 poor people who were really victims of this Democrat manipulation of the issue. And shame on the mayor and the governor of Minnesota for encouraging the violence on the street. But, you know, I think that the president will still go after the organized perpetrators here, and he has to. I mean, it's really crazy stuff that's going on. This is not peaceful protests, Jeremy. This is mob violence, and I think the president will deal with that, but at the same time get some cooperation from the local state and local government in Minnesota in order to find the remaining violent illegal migrants that are still remaining. There's not many left. They've done a good job in Minneapolis. It's a small city. It's not like it's, you know, it's not New York or Chicago or LA. But I do think they're almost done with the job anyway. So why not dial it down, you know, and get away from like the massive media hate on ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. You know, dial it down, get some local cooperation, and then try to, you know, kind of.
Listen, we so appreciate it. You know what breakfast's like, it's madness. Miliband is an economic vandal and killing off our North Sea gas. Imagine what he'd be like as Prime Minister. He's like Japanese knotweed, you say. What do you mean by that?
Well, you think you get rid of him, and then he pops up through the drains and ruins the foundations of your house. I mean, British people voted him down in 2015. I mean, not a time when it's not as if David Cameron and Nick Clegg were wildly popular at the time, but I mean, the public could see Ed Miliband was a wrong 'un, that he was going to damage the economy, tax us all to the hilt, and so on. But you know, okay, you know, we voted him down. He resigned as Labour leader, but now there's a serious chance he could be back as Prime Minister, because you know, Keir Starmer's unlikely to last beyond the local elections. He might not even last beyond the Manchester Gorton by-election. The way things are going. And you know, Andy Burnham has been kept out of Parliament. So who does the crown fall to next? Well, Ed Miliband, rather depressingly for the rest of us, keeps topping these polls of the most popular cabinet minister among Labour members. And you might say, well, what do they matter? Well, they matter everything if it comes to you know, deposing a prime minister in office, and it will be Labour Party members who choose the next prime minister. So it matters a huge amount that Ed Miliband is the most popular among Labour Party members.
I don't see. My thing about Miliband is really simple. I mean, people will, you know, immaturely talk about, you know, the eating of the bacon sandwich. Yes, you're right. He lost. Here's what I don't get, and your article absolutely nails this in the Sun today. This man is hell-bent, it seems, on further bankrupting a country that is already financially on its backside. Billions and billions of pounds that we don't have to chase a dream that net zero. There's somebody once said, what happens if you get there? Because none of the rest of the world, and we apparently are responsible for a little over 1% of carbon emissions, the rest of the world is going, no, actually there's poverty, maybe there's a lack of housing, maybe we need to improve our education system or build some prisons. No. He's obsessed, and they always throw at me, Ross. They go, yes, but we did a survey, and 70% of people say that they're worried. They want net zero. No, I suspect 70% of people, if you said to them, are you concerned? Do you have concerns for the environment? They go, yeah. But I think a large number of those, if you said, where would that money be better spent? On making this country's public services work, on making us secure our borders and getting some more, you know, army personnel in to defend our borders, all those sorts of things. I don't understand how this man, who is a net zero zealot, who doesn't understand anything to do with money, is in a job or as popular as he is, because it doesn't make any damn sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, Ed Miliband is absolutely killing off the North Sea. I mean, last year, for the first time since the 1960s, not a single new well was drilled in the new North Sea. There's a report by the Jobs Foundation this week suggesting, you know, 60,000 jobs could be lost in Aberdeen as a result of the end of oil and gas. And what is Ed Miliband's famous green jobs going to offer in return? Well, you know, very most 1,000 jobs have been promised at this rather dubious quango Great British Energy, which
sorry, can we just talk about where is Great British Energy? Who runs Great British Energy? Where are its offices? That is just a figment of Starmer's bloody imagination. Does anybody know anything about it, Ross?
Theoretically, it's in Aberdeen. It's run by a guy called Jürgen Meyer, who used to work for Siemens UK. So it does sort of have some vague a manifestation.
Why haven't I ever heard of Jürgen? Jürgen's never had an interview in 18 months. Nobody knows who Jürgen is. Let's spot Jürgen.
Indeed. But the really daft thing about this is that even Ed Miliband accepts that we are going to need oil and gas into the future. I mean, you know, he's got this promise to decarbonise the national grid by 2030. But, you know, a central part of his plan to do that is actually to commission a new breed of gas power stations to keep the lights on when the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining. So he accepts that we're going to need gas. But the thing is, he can't seem to tolerate the idea of it being British gas. He wants to import. We're importing, you know, ever greater quantities of gas, often in the form of liquefied national...
Ross, hold page 10 of The Sun. We've done some hard work here. we found a clip of Jürgen Mayer. This is the boss of the organisation GB Energy that nobody really has heard of. This is him talking about energy bills. He exists. This is Jürgen, everybody.
It will help bring energy prices down.
When?
Well, it's a matter for government and policy to decide.
But as the boss of this and as someone who is driving forward the ambition of the government, you surely have an idea in your head of when that central pledge to the people of reducing their bills by £300 will come into action.
It is not in the remit of Great British Energy to work out exactly how that energy costing gets through to the consumer.
Sorry? The man's an absolute tool. Are you sorry? So he's the head of an organisation that nobody understands, that's being presumably costing us millions of pounds, and he basically says it's not my responsibility to lower your bills or tell you when that's going to be. Does that not just, Ross Kling, seriously, sum up this bloody government in about 3 minutes perfectly?
Well, it says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of Great British Energy is it's supposed to invest in new sources of green energy, but I mean, private industry's been doing that for the past 20 years anyway, and you know, egged on by these massive subsidies. But are they bringing down our energy bills? Well, not so far. I mean, since Labour came to power in July 24, the average combined electricity and gas bill has gone up by £190. Yes. So it's not exactly going in the right direction, and nor is it likely to, because, you know, the cost of generating electricity from wind and solar is going up and up. It was the prices were coming down during the 2010s, during the era of really low interest rates. But as soon as interest rates started to rise, the cost of wind and solar energy really went up, and the cost of the steel and so on, natural resources you need to build the wind and solar plants, that's gone up as well. So, you know, it's not going to save us any money.
I've said this many times on this show. There's several people I'm slightly in awe of when I started this job. Next, former Home Office Minister, I bow down, Anne Widdecombe. Good morning.
Morning to you.
You always look. I always feel like I'm looking down. Like you're looking up at me. Are you comfortable, Anne?
I'm very comfortable. Are you comfortable, gentlemen?
Not really, no. But we can't talk about why.
No, well, we live in Britain, don't we?
Precisely. You can pick. I'm going to let you pick, because there's 3 topics that are causing massive anger this morning, Anne. You can talk about Keir Starmer, the duplicitous git who's gone to China. You can talk about the anti-patriotic Brits who are pulling down the flags, or the one-in, one-out shambles. Where do you want to start, Anne Widdecombe?
Well, let's start with the migrants, shall we? Because right from the start, it was predicted by sensible people that one in, one out wasn't going to work. And what is happening is we are still getting, as you rightly say, you know, hundreds, sometimes thousands coming over. They have to be housed, they have to be fed, they have to be looked after, and there is no question of sending as many back as we take. And I said right at the start, I said, even if it worked, supposing it was one in, one out, that doesn't actually help us, because it doesn't reduce the overall numbers. But it isn't one in, one out. It's hundreds in and a couple out.
It's farcical, and I think even Shabana Mahmood yesterday highlighted something that anybody with a common sense bone in their body would know. As you rightly say, that's not going to deal with the problems. It's more window dressing. It's to me, and it's like, you know, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to do one in, one out, we're going to give the French 500 million quid. The only way, surely, to get this under control, and I keep using this word this morning, is to discover politicians with the will. The verve, the desire. And if it takes the Navy in the Channel, if it takes a detention centre that isn't the Ritz, if it takes hard graft of making more deals with more countries for returns, then bloody well give me a politician who says he'll do or she will do that. That's all.
Well, I can. I'll give you Nigel Farage. Yeah. The first and most important thing is that we come out of ECHR. That is crucial, because so long as we don't do that, there are going to be legal challenges, and the lawyers are going to get very fat indeed on thwarting the government. So the first thing we do is come out of ECHR, and Reform has made it very clear that that is a top priority and will be done with all possible.
So have the Tory party. They say it's in their manifesto now. What's your response to that? They say they will leave the ECHR.
Well, they play catch-up. They spent 14 years giving us all the reasons why we couldn't leave ECHR. And then as soon as Reform announced that we are actually going to do it because we know that we can do it, suddenly the Tories discover that it can be done. So what they're doing is playing catch-up. But that is the first thing that is necessary. Then the second thing that is necessary is that you don't house illegal migrants in the community, in houses of multiple occupation or in hotels. What you do is you house them in secure detention centres.
Yeah.
Look at Crowborough. It's not secure. And yet it's going to take a very large number of migrants, and it's not secure. You house them in secure detention centres. You tell them on the shore that their claim for asylum won't even be examined because they patently obviously come from a perfectly safe country, and therefore we will not entertain an application for asylum. So you've got refusal, then you've got detention, and then the last stage, of course, is deport. And that is what the policy has to be. And Jeremy, yes, of course it's littered with difficulty, but it's a long, long way from impossible, and we have to get on with it. And you're quite right. I've been using that expression, will, for a very long time. You need politicians with the will.
I couldn't agree more, and I struggle to understand how a country like ours can't form a crack force of people who can actually see through all these pathetic excuses. I think we need a government also that will take control of these human rights lawyers who charge the taxpayer thousands to find some old-fashioned law from 200 years ago. We need to stand up for ourselves. Talking of that, Nikki in Bristol, Anne, no respect for our flag, then don't enjoy the freedoms that come with our country. This is This Talk exclusive. This morning, Anti-Patriotic Brits have launched a coordinated campaign to rip down Union Jacks put up over the summer. The flag-hating group, operating on social media, for Christ's sake, has created a live map pinpointing the exact locations of the flags in a bid to remove them. Great work by Isabel Oakeshott. Why are we, Anne Widdecombe? You were a Home Office minister. You were a stalwart for years. How have I ended up living in a country where government buildings, for example, will fly the European flag, they'll fly the Gaza flag, the Palestinian flag, the I'd like to have my hair done flag, but apparently the Union Jack or the George Cross or whatever is racist or inflammatory or divisive. I think it's an absolute outrage, mate. I really do. Terrible.
I agree with you. To be perfectly fair, you do get Union Jacks flying from government buildings. And you, particularly whenever you have a state visit, you know, the whole mall is covered with Union Jacks. So it isn't that the government doesn't fly the Union Jack, but you have a group in society who seriously think that any demonstration of patriotism is somehow a demonstration of nationalism. And of course, it's not. And my answer to this is simple. OK, so they take down the flags, then they move on. You come along behind them, put the flags up again.
Have you got a flag flying in Shea Widdecombe outside?
I haven't got a flagpole and a flag flying, no. But I always do wave a Union Jack around when it's appropriate.
Good for you. The other story today centres on our boss, I say, the human rights guru, Sir Keir Starmer, who... It was only in December, Anne, when he stood up and he said that he thought that China was a danger in terms of security and in terms of the power they were trying to exude across the world. We'll know that in the last couple of weeks he's allowed this, I'm going to call it not a super embassy, a super spy chamber to be built in London. He's off to, in front of the papers, actually, in front of the Telegraph today, saying, we will be safer and richer with China's help, which just about sums up how he goes around in circles. But this is surely all about, he says, a trade deal that's only necessary with people we can't trust, because he and his team are going with burner phones, because his own party have been so economically illiterate that growth hasn't happened, the opposite has happened, and our economy is on its backside. Isn't that the reason he's kowtowing to China?
Well, I don't know what the reason is that he's kowtowing to China, because China is undeniably a danger. But on the other hand, you confront danger with diplomacy where you can. I don't object per se to the Prime Minister going to China, but the real test is what he says, what he does, and any agreements that come out of it. That is the real test. And frankly, I don't trust him to stand up for Britain.
Isn't that, you know, if we just take 30 seconds, you and I can't imagine that has ever been said about any Prime Minister, and I've disagreed with many. We don't trust him. We don't believe he's for us, the people, and for Great Britain. I've had more texts on this morning than anything, all saying, what part of Britain's he going to give away? He pontificates and rushes around the world as this human rights law, giving away the Chagos Islands and, what was it, £16 billion worth of money to look good with his mate Herma, whilst his own people at home, they're not starving, but they're struggling. And it astounds me, Anne, that he's so tone deaf, or his advisors are so inept, that he doesn't realise the level of anger.
Yes, I mean, that's absolutely right. It is ineptitude. You choose the right word. It's not deliberate treachery. It is just sheer ineptitude and tone deafness. And he isn't hearing what people are saying. And that is why that is why there are so many U-turns, Jeremy. It's because eventually his own ministers are forced to force him to change his mind, because they occasionally, only occasionally, do hear what is being said and understand the damage that is being done. But the sooner they're out, the better, and I'm afraid we've got another 3 years of it.
We can finish in a light-hearted way, because you, of all people, will smile at me. Shabana Mahmood yesterday said that the naughtiest thing she's ever done is taking a drag on a cigarette. In 2017, Theresa May said the naughtiest thing she'd ever done was running through fields of wheat. Anne Widdecombe, what's the naughtiest thing you've ever done?
I dressed up as a ghost along with another girl, and we walked through, I went to a convent boarding school, we walked through the convent at midnight. What we didn't understand and didn't know was that a nun was dying at that time, and of course we gave everybody a terrible fright.
Oh, Anne Widdecombe, story of the morning. We love having you on, my sweetheart. Thank you so much indeed.